Medina Hospital received 33 cases, including 4 serious ones. Some have been discharged. More than 80 people were injured in this attack, and we will work hard to ensure they receive proper health care.
Outside the scene of the attack, business owners have returned to count their losses. Nearby, twisted vehicles and rickshaws destroyed in the attacks remain on the main road in the capital. After this latest attack, many here in the capital will be demanding answers from authorities as to just how the militant group was able to stage such a complex attack in the heart of the capital, despite increased security presence along major roads of the capital.
The recent assault was an attack on civilians in Somalia, and there's only one option for all of us: defeating the enemy of peace. We are now in the process of strengthening our armed forces, equipping them and providing them with logistical support. I assure you all that we will defeat al-Shabaab.
Insecurity has remained a big challenge for President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo's administration that vowed to end al-Shabaab's insurgency within 2 years. A series of air attacks against the group by US military has claimed hundreds of its fighters outside Mogadishu. But the group continues to carry out regular attacks in the capital against government officials and security personnel. Last week, government forces retook control of this military base in the capital that served as an African Union post for the first time in 11 years, as AMISOM plans to hand over security responsibilities to local forces before it winds down its decade-long mission in the country. Abdul Aziz Bilo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
To Kenya now, and groups of people are fighting to contain a fierce forest fire that's been raging on Mount Kenya in Mount Kenya National Park for close to a week now. The government force in charge of national parks, the Kenya Wildlife Service, says it has made good progress, but is still appealing for help. More than 80,000 hectares around the wider Mount Kenya region have been destroyed. Wildlife rangers, soldiers and huge teams of volunteers are trying to stop the blaze. Mount Kenya is Africa's second highest peak and home to wild animals.
This time in the year we are combating some of the worst fires on Mount Kenya and as well as Aberdare, together with our partner Kenya Forest Service and some other stakeholders. So the fire has not interfered with the tourism activities, especially the people hiking up on the mountain or visiting the various tourist activities in the park, except the first day when it started, when some people going down the Chogoria route had actually to wait for some time so that the smoke can clear.
An international appeal for aid for drought-stricken Zimbabwe has already raised over $25 million. 2 days ago, the United Nations began mobilizing support for an estimated 5.3 million people facing food shortages in the southern African nation. Here's CGTN's Farai Wakatuya with the details.
Erratic rainfall has severely affected production of food crops, in particular the staple maize, whose output is expected to plummet from 1.7 million tons in 2018 to under a million this year. Annual consumption is about 1.8 million tons. The deficit will leave at least 5 million people, about a third of the country's population, food insecure. The United Nations has received a positive response from donors for its $234 million appeal.
We are seeing interest, we are seeing concern, and we recognize that these interests and concerns would translate to resources because they fully are aware of the sufferings of the Zimbabweans.
The funds will cover various needs, but the bulk will go towards food.
And we recognize that the most efficient, effective mode of assistance would be through cash transfers. In other words, every household would have a cash entitlement that is equivalent to their daily food needs. So, with the 130 million, that is supposed to cover 2.2 million chronically severe food insecure households.
Ongoing economic challenges are compounding the latest drought.
if you recall 2 years ago when we had the worst El Nino-induced drought, even though there were about 4.1 million people who were affected, their recovery pace was very fast. They were able to rebound from that shock because the economy was running well, so to speak. Now, even when we do provide some form of assistance in the form of cash, they have to contend with the volatility on commodity prices or even the scarcity of commodities.
The just-launched emergency appeal will keep vulnerable communities fed during this lean season up to June. However, given the devastating impact of climate change, development agencies aren't sure what the next agricultural season will deliver. The World Food Programme says it's working on food security projections for the next 24 months to make sure that they are ready to assist a country that is increasingly prone to climate-induced humanitarian challenges. Farah Makutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
In Egypt, doors have reopened to fewer passengers than normal at Cairo's central train station. This follows an accident where 22 people died and dozens were injured on Wednesday. Egypt's Transport Minister Hisham Arafat has since resigned from office. The country's public prosecutor has ordered the detention of 6 people for 4 days in connection with the incident. The train's driver, his assistant, another train driver and 3 other rail employees will be held for 4 days for investigations.
Egypt has the second oldest railroad network in the world. 4,300 railway crossings stretch across the country. Most of them are operated manually. At least 1,000 accidents that involve trains have been taking place every year since 2008. 12 deadly accidents took place in the last decade, including Wednesday's locomotive crash.
The Egyptian railroad is a graveyard for transportation ministers. A minister for transportation does not have first-hand responsibility in that accident. Their resignations are usually political. This week's accident is no different from the previous railroad accidents. Most of them have happened due to human errors, poor maintenance and lack of trained labor.
The government estimates that full renovation of the Egyptian railway service could cost up to $14 billion. State budget deficit, however, usually stand in the way. Last transportation minister needed some $600 million for urgent maintenance in 2018. The government allocated less than half of that sum.
More accidents will happen. We've seen accidents in the most advanced nations who have better human caliber and technologies. Egypt has not developed its employees or even infrastructure. Employees are very poor, have little salaries and social status. The same people will be operating the current or new machineries.
Wednesday's accident has exposed the decomposing infrastructure. After a crash between 2 locomotives, the conductor from one went to fight with the other driver, leaving his machine running. The locomotive slipped away and created a deadly blaze, which people tried to put out with buckets of water instead of water hose.
The state must realize that it is not a bad idea to resolve the current mismanagement and poor maintenance by inviting the private sector. We must bring in investors to turn this massive railroad infrastructure into a profitable business. That will give our citizens safe and developed means of transport and will not put any financial burden onto the government.
Egypt was the second country in the world to introduce railroads to its people. But what should have been a source of pride for the nation has been a death trap for many citizens. In 2018, the parliament has been working on a law that would allow the private sector to invest and restore the infrastructure of railroads. However, that law has never been implemented. Adil Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
In Algeria, angry residents have held protests against President Abdelaziz Bouteflika. re-election bid. The bid has stoked resentment among Algerians who believe he is not fit to lead. Well, Bouteflika suffered a stroke in 2013 and has been seen in public only a few times since. The protests were mostly peaceful, but scuffles between police and protesters broke out in the capital Algiers on Friday. One person died and dozens were injured as a result. The president has not yet addressed the protests. Well, we are going to a short break now. Don't go away. Lots more to come, including Nigeria's electoral body launches investigations into violence meted out on some of its officials last week. And Kenya's Uhuru Kenyatta visits Ethiopia as the two countries seek to strengthen ties.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
For lucrative economic data out of the country, the country's foreign currency reserves.
With a dedicated and diverse team of anchors, CGTN now brings Africa to the palm of your hand.
I'm Perina Karibe in the heart of Nairobi, which is bustling.
From everyday heroes to the continent's most powerful figures, we bring their voices to you.
Nothing changed.
And this is something most of us are very excited about.
We bring you news that's changing perspectives. News that brings Africa to the world. CGTN. See the difference. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Nigeria's Electoral Commission has asked its officials to file comprehensive reports after some were threatened, kidnapped and raped while conducting last week's elections. The Commission says the report will help its polling officials in the upcoming governorship elections. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam reports.
Most of the polling officials are university graduates who are currently undergoing a mandatory National Youth Service. They were employed on casual basis. Earlier reports had indicated one was killed, others were harassed, beaten and even kidnapped. But claims of rape is just emerging. The Commission's chairman has now ordered for a detailed report to ascertain the scale of attacks. The Commission is also assessing the effectiveness of security deployed during the elections. Nigerians will return to the polls March 9 to vote for governors and state legislators. The Commission wants to ensure violence is not repeated. Dozens were killed in last week's disputed elections. President Muhammadu Buhari retained his seat. The main opposition candidate, Atiku Abubakar, has rejected the results. His lawyers are compiling evidence to challenge the results in court. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta is visiting Ethiopia as the two countries seek to strengthen existing ties. Kenyatta began his two-day visit early on Friday and together with his host, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, President over the opening of a Kenya-Ethiopia Trade Forum. The event is seen as a platform to boost trade relations. The leaders are spearheading economic reforms in their individual countries.
Kenya and Ethiopia have and continue to enjoy strong socio-economic and political identity rooted in mutual respect, understanding, and deep sense of solidarity. I wish to seize the opportunity on this extraordinary occasion of our gathering today to draw your attention to our ties that hold us together as East African brothers and sisters.
Two nations have enjoyed a historical bond that has been a strong foundation of our strategic partnership. Today's mission, therefore, offers us a unique opportunity to chart a path for our common prosperity through robust economic and trade relations. I believe this mission is timely, happening at a time when, under your leadership, Prime Minister, the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia is undergoing fundamental political and economic transformation. And please, on my own behalf and on behalf of the people of Kenya, accept my profound congratulations for your visionary leadership.
And on the sidelines of his visit to Ethiopia, the Kenyan president spoke to CGTN's Grim Chala. Uhuru Kenyatta says the growing relations between Ethiopia and Kenya are key to the region's development and its economy.
Our two countries will be able to engage each other much more constructively in terms of trade and investment, and to take the opportunities in order to bring prosperity to our region.
How do you view Ethiopia's potentials from now on, perhaps in bringing East Africa together and more?
I think it's wonderful. I think there is a golden opportunity. The leadership is very positive. We in Kenya are also very positive, and we're encouraged by what we see, and we believe that this is ultimately going to be good for the people of our region and to bring prosperity to our region.
Mr. President, trade relationship is important, as you've been speaking earlier. How do you want to develop the Lamu port with Ethiopia and also the corridor you've been talking about?
Well, as you know, we hopefully will be opening the first few berths in Lamu in a couple of months' time. And as we have always stated, that port we are developing not as a Kenyan port, but as a regional port. It will belong to Kenya. We also want to partner, to give berths and to give development space to our brothers in Ethiopia, to our brothers in South Sudan. So we have common ownership, and we use that port to open up those areas, our common areas along those borders especially, and make them powerful economic zones and start taking advantage of the opportunity, both of the people and the resources that we have.
The Ethiopian Ministry of Foreign Affairs is urging citizens to use official channels while securing opportunities to study in China. Ethiopia is the biggest beneficiary of the Human Resources Corporation under the Global China Aid Framework. By the end of 2017, China had trained more than 5,000 Ethiopians in various fields. Every year, more than 400 Ethiopian students travel to China for further studies, but some brokers are using this to exploit citizens. At least 47 Ethiopian people have been arrested in connection with drug and substance abuse in China.
China and Ethiopia share strong economic, political and social ties. Many Ethiopian students have benefited from Chinese scholarships. We want to discourage students who are trying to go to China from using illegal ways or illegal scholarship brokers. Neither the government of China nor Ethiopia are responsible for citizens and students who are using these illegal channels. Consuming khat and drugs is also a crime in China.
Botswana has offered to lend neighbouring Zimbabwe $95 million in private sector loans to help ease its economic crisis. Zimbabwe is currently in dire need of credit to revive its ailing economy that's been struggling for over the past 20 years. CGTN's Farai Mwakatuya explains.
An inaugural Zimbabwe-Botswana Binational Commission meeting ended Thursday with the signing of a series of agreements that will enhance cooperation in trade, mining, energy, science and technology. Botswana, which is seeking export-led growth, has put up a 1 billion pula facility to support companies willing to set up shop in its investment-hungry neighbor. The two countries are also reported to have agreed on a credit line for Zimbabwe's private sector, a move that would be a vote of confidence in economic recovery efforts underway in Harare.
It will go a long way in supporting Zimbabwe's private sector, giving it much needed credit lines, but also in a way that will also be supportive of the reforms we have made in terms of currency reforms, the market-based exchange rate.
Since becoming president in November 2017, Emmerson Mnangagwa has sought investment and financial aid from the West, but has shifted focus closer to home, including economically smaller nations.
Trade and bilateral agreements are based on exchange of natural resources. It's a reciprocal agreement. I think it's the new concept of trying to exchange the little that we've got, especially amongst neighboring countries. We are not desperate as Zimbabwe, but it's the reality of regional economic integration.
Apart from giving a boost to intra-Africa trade, the recently concluded summit marks a new high for Zimbabwe-Botswana relations, which had been strained for over a decade due to political differences between the country's former leaders. Economic ties have dominated this binational commission. However, the restored fraternal relations will also see Botswana provide Zimbabwe with diplomatic and political support. Botswana has committed to assisting Zimbabwe's international re-engagement.
We continue to find solace and encouragement from the unequivocal support and solidarity from friends like Botswana with regards the call for the unconditional removal of the illegal sanctions imposed on our country.
US-imposed embargoes have stifled economic recovery and are blamed for negatively affecting ordinary Zimbabwean citizens. Farai Makutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Tanzania's government has closed a number of foreign exchange bureaus in the commercial capital, Dar es Salaam. The central bank says it decided to revoke their licenses, arguing that they were operating illegally. CGTN's Daniel Kido has the latest.
This week, the Central Bank of Tanzania decided to carry impromptu routine inspections of forex bureaus operating in Dar es Salaam cities. It was discovered that some of the bureaus were not operating in accordance to the forex business rules and regulations. As a result, the Central Bank of Tanzania started revoking trading licenses of all the bureaus that are not compliant with trading laws.
Either anyone giving or using services at a bureau that does not follow the law will be met with severe legal action. Both sides who use this illegal black market will face the law.
Dar es Salaam is the third region of Tanzania that has faced forex crackdown in recent months. Last year, the government conducted similar surprise inspections in Arusha and Moshi regions. It was found that not only were some of the bureaus operating against regulations, but others were implicated in money laundering and being proxies for illicit financial flows. However, no one has been arrested so far, but the bank maintains that the investigation is still ongoing. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Dar es Salaam, Tanzania.
Made in Ghana might not be internationally known yet, but one trade event in the country is attempting to change that. It's all happening at this year's International Trade Fair in Accra, with a number of small and medium-scale businesses, as well as foreign companies in attendance. CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai reports now from Accra.
Over 600 local and foreign businesses have descended on Accra. Gladys Nso has come all the way from the northern region of Ghana to exhibit her clothing here. She wants her made-in-Ghana products to find customers around the world.
There are people who are around. They don't know that we have things like this here. They don't know that we have things like this in Ghana. Apart from the smokes and other things, we have the shirts that they don't know that we have them. So when they host a program like this and they come to know that we have things like this, after the fair, even when they don't buy, but after the fair they buy.
For Abdul Raj, the trade fair gives him the opportunity to introduce his solar products. His company is linked to a Germany-based industry that is helping set up a manufacturing plant for the solar products to be made right here in Ghana.
It's been very easy to establish a presence in Ghana when we brought the products in. We have evolved. We now produce some of these things in Asia under OEM agreement, especially with China, Hong Kong, and other countries.
This year's trade fair is not only serving as a platform to promote made in Ghana goods. Exhibitors here, both local and foreign, are looking at ways to form partnerships to promote their businesses. Ghana was West Africa's largest recipient of foreign direct investment in 2018, according to the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development's latest report. International trade fairs like this are aimed at keeping that trend going.
We're seeing a lot more foreign direct investment coming to the manufacturing space. And this is the place where they will show the goods that they have actually produced, and to enable other investors come and have a look, or people with trade ambitions come and have a look.
If you're exhibiting here and similar products are being exhibited, you get to see those similar products. You compare to yours, you see where you can tweak yours a little bit, you can improve yours so that you can be in the competition. So in so many respects, it brings a lot of opportunity to the companies that are exhibiting.
The International Trade Fair lasts for next 2 weeks. For these local small and medium-scale businesses and foreign companies exhibiting their goods and services, they are building their businesses and networking to learn from one another. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
You're watching breaking news on CGTN.
Welcome to the world today on CGTN.
Recapping your headlines now, and the death toll from a deadly attack in Mogadishu in Somalia now stands at 30. The number is expected to rise. Police say security will be improved across the capital as the militant group has warned of more attacks in the coming days. Groups of people are fighting to contain a fierce forest fire that's been raging in Mt.Kenya National Park for close to a week now. The government force in charge of national parks, that's the Kenya Wildlife Service, says it's made good progress but is still appealing for help. More than 80,000 hectares around the wider Mount Kenya region have now been destroyed. Doors have reopened to fewer passengers than normal at Cairo's central train station. This follows an accident where 22 people died and dozens were injured on Wednesday. Egypt's Transport Minister Hisham Arafat has since resigned from office. The country's public prosecutor has ordered the detention of 6 people for 4 days in connection with the incident. And an international appeal for aid for drought-stricken Zimbabwe has already raised over $25 million. 2 days ago, the United Nations began mobilizing support for an estimated 5.3 million people facing food shortages in the southern African nation. And those are the top stories that we're covering for you. Well, we are going to a short break now. We've got all the business news coming up, including China's annual political season kicks off this weekend. And Canada moves ahead with US request to extradite Huawei CFO Meng Wanzhou.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year.
If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home, and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN. See the difference.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You got to get out, go there, and you find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca, among the crowds in Cairo,
who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
along the waters of the Nile, along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
This weekend marks the beginning of China's annual political season, also known as the Two Sessions. The country's national political advisory body, the National Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, begins its 13th session on March the 3rd. Then on March the 5th, China's national legislature, the National People's Congress, begins its 13th session. Well, hundreds of members will be in Beijing with different proposals. Here are some of them.
China's business environment rose by 32 places in the world last year. That shows the confidence in the Chinese market is growing. My proposal this year is to further optimize the business environment.
We need to provide more suggestions on how to better build the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area. We should manage the area well and bring benefits to the people of the three places.
We have entered a critical period in the fight against poverty. My proposal is to develop specific industries in rural areas, so people living in poor areas can eventually become rich.
China has attached great importance to the elderly care industry and has made great achievements. This year, I will look at the legal system that focuses on elderly care. I would like to invite more people to enter this industry.
Well, once approved, these proposals often become official policy. Here's an example from one of CPPCC's newest members, Wang Xiaochuan. He proposed tax cuts last year. CGTN's Zhou Yun caught up with him.
He was well known as an innovative entrepreneur, and now a new role helps him shine in a different light. Last year, as the new member of the National Committee of China's top political advisory body, Wang Xiaochuan proposed using tax cuts as an incentive to propel scientific research.
China's total investment in application-based research is around 1.6 trillion yuan. But the rate of technology transfer from this research is lower than that of developed countries. The main reason is the investment is spent before tangible results are made. So my tax cut proposal was aimed at commercializing the research and bringing real social benefits.
Wang's proposal not only got positive feedback from the government, but was even partially adopted and converted into articles of policy.
My proposal was partially accepted in an official document made by the Ministry of Science and Technology, as well as other governmental departments. This document has now been implemented by universities and research institutions. Earlier this year, the Beijing Taxation Bureau sent tax experts to talk with us on how to encourage scientific innovation with tax cuts more effectively.
Well, I know this year one of your proposals is going to focus on this issue again. So how are you going to push forward one step further?
This year, on one hand, it focuses more on the innovation of private companies, and on the other, with the help of local taxation officials, we are able to better the evaluation system and return analysis.
From an entrepreneur to a CPPCC member, Wang realizes that what he said and what he suggested now is not only changing his own company, but even making a nationwide impact. As a pioneer and a strong supporter of artificial intelligence, he says that China's application of AI is leading the world, and that this year's 2 sessions will also call for the government to take the chance and further upgrade the AI industry.
The openness of big data will decide the core competencies of China's future AI development. Even though there have been improvements, there's still a lot of room for the government to further open its data access.
So besides new proposals, new ideas and thoughts Xiaochuan is going to bring to the CPPCC annual meeting this time, there's also a visual new assistant that he'll bring with him this time, right, Xiaochuan?
Yes, it's a version of me and generated by our engineers. If I input my thoughts in text, it will generate the video clip, and it can talk like me, it can look like me, so I can use it as my assistant.
大家好，我是搜狗 AI 合成助手，很高兴认識大家。
And I think this is the beauty of this political advisory system, is to have advisors like Xiaochuan that will bring those kind of new technologies and insights that will not only help to enhance their own specialty area, but more importantly, combined, that will make China a greater nation. So Yun, CGTN, Beijing.
Huawei's CFO Meng Wanzhou is one step closer to being extradited to the United States. Canada says the extradition case against her can proceed. CGTN's Jim Spellman has more.
Meng Wanzhou is scheduled to appear in court March 6th. That's when the Canadian authorities will begin deciding whether Meng, the daughter of Huawei's founder, will be sent to the U.S. for trial. The process could take months or even years. China's embassy in Canada released a statement blasting the decision. It reads in part, "This is not a merely judicial case, but a political persecution against a Chinese high-tech enterprise."
What are you doing?
Meng was arrested in Vancouver in December, charged in the U.S. with fraud over allegations she lied to banks about Huawei-related companies selling U.S. computer components to Iran, violating U.S. sanctions. Reuters reports Huawei will be arraigned on those charges March 14th in Brooklyn, New York. The company will enter a plea at that time. Huawei has denied wrongdoing, and China is calling for Meng's release. In a separate U.S. case, Huawei pleaded not guilty to charges related to alleged theft of trade secrets from T-Mobile. A criminal trial is set to begin next year. These legal cases are playing out as the U.S., Australia, and New Zealand have banned government agencies from using Huawei equipment, alleging its hardware poses a security threat.
Our task has been to share with the world the risks associated with the technology.
No hard evidence has been released to back those claims, and Huawei denies it hands over data to the Chinese government. And Huawei is pushing back, taking out full-page ads in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and other U.S. papers. It reads in part, "I am writing to you in the hopes that we can come to understand each other better. In recent years, the U.S. government has developed some misunderstandings about us. We would like to draw your attention to the facts." The company says it operates successfully in more than 170 countries, often providing service in regions where Western companies can't or won't operate. Jim Spellman, CGTN, Washington.
Well, we are going to a short break now. Don't go away. Lots more to come, including the story of Ali Abdi, who not only found refuge in Rwanda, but a thriving business and the love of his life.
When you look at Africa, what do you really see? Do you see fast-growing, endless deserts and parched earth? Or do you see the biggest opportunity for an agricultural revolution in a generation? Do you see crowded, unplanned cities or vast, untapped markets? Do you see a population risk, or do you see a billion-strong opportunity to grow the next wave of multi-billion-dollar firms in Africa? When you look at Africa, what do you really see? Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
A British primatologist, Jane Goodall, has been visiting Sierra Leone's Takugama Chimpanzee Sanctuary to raise awareness of the endangered primates there. The country is home to about 10% of an estimated 55,000 chimpanzees still living in the wild. President Julius Maada Bio has presented her with the highest honor in Sierra Leone.
Sierra Leone has one of the highest concentrations of chimpanzees in the world. Its Takugama Chimpanzee Sanctuary is internationally recognized for rehabilitating chimps rescued from captivity for eventual release back into the wild. The sanctuary is an idea of the world's foremost primatologist, Jane Goodall.
But what it takes to protect the chimpanzees is somebody with passion and heart to create a sanctuary as Bala has created Takugama, and also to bring this up to the attention of the government so that there's help from the government in protecting chimpanzees.
Goodall also believes ecotourism could play a large part in helping Sierra Leoneans develop a culture of forest protection. According to UN figures, Sierra Leone's forest cover has been on the decline due to the expansion of human settlements.
Because forests absorb carbon dioxide and they give us oxygen, they provide clean water and clean air. And if all around the world the importance of protecting and restoring forests was understood, that would go a long way towards mitigating the effects of climate change.
Jane Goodall rose to fame in the 1960s through her groundbreaking study of chimpanzees in East Africa. Her foundation is keen on educating young people about the importance of wildlife protection.
Thank you very much for your dedication and hard work around the world. We will always support you and we will do exactly what we can. I am a lay environmentalist myself, and I promise that I will join my colleagues who are active in supporting wildlife around the world so that we can at least stop them from extinction. Thank you so much for accepting our honor. Thank you.
The West African chimpanzees are the only critically endangered subspecies of chimp. Chambono, CGTN.
Now to Ethiopia. Every weekend, hundreds of Addis Ababa residents sweat it out together at the city's main square. Fitness instructor Abdul Fattah Muzenyen leads his sessions for free, hoping to get as many people as possible to exercise. Although people are living longer, lifestyle diseases are on the rise across Africa.
Every Sunday morning, Addis Ababa's residents gather in Meskel Square to exercise with Abdul Fattah Muzenyen. The fitness instructor's free sessions take hundreds of participants through simple aerobic routines.
A good friend of mine who used to exercise here brought me 3 years ago. Since then, I never miss a single day unless something urgent comes up. I really look forward to Sundays.
I will continue exercising with this group for a long time. I enjoy the fun of working with many people. Working out with a group helps boost your morale. I like everything about it. I will continue working out with them unless I am sick or something. Meskel Square is a popular hub at the weekends. Zayin noticed that whenever he was working out with his friends, people wanted to join in. So in 2003, he began his classes that include cardio training and toning. For those who can't afford the gym, working out with Zayin is a way to have fun and get fit.
The response from the people is amazing. It's really gratifying. There are all kinds of people here, young, old, male, female, and children. I don't make them do heavy exercises. I want them to exercise in a fun way so that they just sweat and go home.
Lifestyle diseases like diabetes and cancer are on the rise in Africa. Unhealthy diets, lack of exercise, smoking, and alcohol are all contributing factors, according to the World Health Organization.